Hello, I'm Abby McHugh-Griffa, Executive Director of the Climate Solutions Accelerator. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about power. Now, if you just kind of recoiled at that a little bit and you're like, ooh, power, let's not talk about that, how distasteful. I would just invite you to pause and reflect on why you might have had that reaction. And I would suggest that that might come from the fact that one way that power maintains itself in this world is through the silence of those who maybe don't have as much power. And so, thinking about in our culture how it's distasteful to talk about money or politics or religion, right? And these are actually systems of power. To the extent that we don't feel comfortable talking about them and questioning kind of some of the underlying assumptions there, well, those systems are going to maintain themselves, right? So I've been reflecting a lot on power recently for a few reasons. One is, of course, that our summit is coming up. And the theme, energy equals the ability to do work, is inextricably linked to power, right? Because power is the rate of flow of energy over time, or in other words, how fast work gets done. And when you think about it, this kind of more sciencey technical definition actually makes a lot of sense in the social context. Because, for example, very wealthy individuals or corporations who have a lot of resources can pay people or for computing power to get more work done and get it done faster. So their goals are going to advance more quickly than the goals of an individual organization who is working with fewer resources and cannot leverage that same kind of energy to get work done. So, we see that right now with, for example, the build out of AI and this arms race to develop AI, right? Who can, win that, have the most power, have the most influence over, all of humanity at this point, quite frighteningly. But then also we see it, for example, in the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry has a lot of money that it can use to pay people and pay for marketing to spread their message, promote their goals. And guess what? Unfortunately, they are currently, I would say, winning because they have more power, right? They have more power and they are defeating the environmental movement pretty soundly right now. And we see that at the federal level, but unfortunately, we're also seeing it at the state level. And so if you've been following what's happening with the state budget process right now, you would know that Governor Hochul is trying her darndest to roll back the CLCPA in a few key ways. She wants to, from what we understand, right? And this is happening behind closed doors. Again, we could talk about the who has power and influence and how it's wielded and what that means for the democratic process. And there's so much we could dig into. But back to what we understand Hochul is trying to do right now is push back the goals and the timeline of the CLCPA, make those goals unenforceable, and change the greenhouse gas accounting methodology to make it look like New York is making more progress on climate than it actually is. And it does seem, though, we don't know exactly what's going on in her head, right? No one can know what's going on in her head. But it does seem like something is influencing her, perhaps, campaign donations. We don't know. But for whatever reason, she has aligned herself pretty solidly at this point with the fossil fuel industry's goals and is just, walking all over, using her power to basically wipe out all of the work that climate activists, other, energy affordability, energy justice advocates have been working toward for years and years and years. So, for example, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and the scoping plan that came out of that, so many people, both experts and just average citizens, contributed to developing that plan. And now this one person with, also Stewart, Cousins, and Hastie, so 3 people in a room, as they say, are positioned to just kill it, right? So this is disturbing. And it really, again, I think, raises questions about how power is wielded, who has power, why they have power, why they use their power the way they use it, and what the rest of us can do to push back. So I've been thinking a lot about how we can build the power of our local environmental movement. And I know for certain that we are never going to be wielding the financial resources that the fossil fuel industry has. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, probably. So what should our power building strategy be? And as I see it at this point, the power over thing, like us making decisions on behalf of others, is not going to work. Again, we don't have the resources to be able to mobilize that kind of effort. So thinking about collective power and how we build power, with existing environmental groups, but also building connections with other organizations and movements that are generally aligned with our goals. And what you see play out, unfortunately, in many activist spaces is that, even though we might not have tons of power, power dynamics and power struggles end up playing out kind of on the interpersonal level in ways that often derail progress, of grassroots organizations. So there might just be, infighting, competition over resources, decision-making, power, and these sorts of things that get in the way of getting actual work done. So as I see it right now, we need to figure out how to better collaborate, work together, again, to build that collective power so that we aren't getting trounced by the fossil fuel industry and the politicians who are in their pocket. So all this is to say, if you haven't already made some phone calls to the governor, possibly, although really our targets right now, we are calling on our local delegation to put pressure on the leaders of their respective houses. So we want our local state senators to be calling Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, and we want our local assembly members to be calling Speaker Hastie to pressure them to not cave in to the governor's demands. So please, if you haven't yet reached out to your representative, please do so. Get on the phone, help friends and families, engage them, ask them, say, hey, it just takes 2 minutes. Just make this phone call real quick for me. Thanks. And because that is a way of practicing our power and, again, building our skills, our community to build collective power. So please do make those calls. It is urgent. Like, this is kind of existential for New York's climate movement. And I hate to use that language, but it's mission critical right now. And my other invitation is, if you haven't already registered to attend our summit, registration closes on Monday the 20th. And I do think, both from an education standpoint, right, learning more about education and power and work and how those things are related and how we can make strategic decisions about them. So there's that, but there's also the opportunity to connect and build relationships with other people who are doing this work and find opportunities for collaboration. So the summit, I would say, those are the two big goals of it, and we would love for you to be there, for you to make the choice to spend your time and energy, right, because that's your power, engaging with this work so we can be pushing back on what's happening at the state level and beyond. And final note about that, if you have books that are related to the summit's theme or climate issues in general that you are done with and ready to pass along, please bring them to the summit because we will be doing the book swap again this year. Just last reminder, registration closes on Monday the 20th, and we appreciate your energy, appreciate your time, and look forward to building power together to do good things in our region and beyond. Thank you.